All right, we're back once again on Capitol Tonight. Opponents of the Scaffold law are teaming up on a new ad campaign that they say demonstrates what the statute is costing New York. The Scaffold law relates to liability for accidents on construction sites, and getting the New York Building and the Alliance for Minority and Women Construction Business say it drives up insurance costs, making it harder for contractors to stay afloat. That includes New York City's School Construction Alliance, which expects to add an extra $450 million in insurance costs over the next 3 years. Joining me now to talk more about the issue is the president of the Associated General Contractors for New York State, Mike Elmendorf. Mike, good to see you.
Good to see you, Nick. Thank you.
So let's talk about this ad campaign for a second. This is going to be starting right before the governor delivers his State of the State address, his last State of the State address, really, before he runs for re-election. What do you hope to accomplish?
I think it's actually starting right now. I believe we're on the air. Look, this is hardly a new issue, right? I mean, and in fact, it's one of these issues when you start talking to people who've been around the Capitol for a while, some of them understandably kind of roll their eyes and say, oh no, not that again, right? But although it's not a new issue, it is a different moment right now for this issue for a lot of reasons.
Why is that?
Well, the first one is, for a long time, this was a problem of cost, right? The insurance costs were higher for the construction industry and significantly for owners as well, because what this law does, and it's unique to New York, despite what you might hear from some folks on the other side who are telling all sorts of stories, some of which aren't quite accurate, this law only exists in New York, and it imposes absolute liability on both contractors and owners. So whether you're a private developer, whether you're a school district, a local government, a farmer, a small business, whoever it might be, absolute liability for any gravity-related injury on a construction site, regardless of what actually happened. So it's a very unique law that's about 130 years old. Now, what's different now is, for a long time, what this did, understandably, is it drove up the cost of insurance in New York, because you really can't mitigate your costs and your exposure when there's a claim, because you can't, for instance, go to court and say, okay, well, maybe the contractor did something wrong, but maybe the worker did something wrong too. It's that how every other type of civil liability works, how medical malpractice works. Every type of civil liability, there's some sort of comparative negligence. You don't have that here, which is really what the problem is. So cost was the issue for a long time, but it's gotten so bad that now it's really become a question of availability of insurance. Contractors are not only paying much, much more for insurance in New York than they are elsewhere. In many cases, they're having problems getting the insurance that they need to build, and so too are owners. For instance, the New York City School Construction Authority is still trying to piece together an insurance program to insure their construction program, which is usually worth several $billions a year, to build New York City schools. Now, right now, they can tell you that for the difference in what they're paying for insurance this year in New York, or what they paid, $100 million, they would have paid $25 million in New Jersey to insure the same program. They've been unable to build 2 to 3 additional schools. Going forward, their costs are going to at least double for a one-year program for the coming year, which is going to mean they're going to be able to build many fewer schools. It's going to mean thousands of pre-K seats, which is integral to the new mayor's agenda, that are going to be lost. So it's no longer a crisis of cost, it's about availability at this point.
I do think we have some of that ad queued up and ready to go. If we could just play a few seconds of that ad right now, just to give viewers an idea of what it's going to look like.
Greedy trial lawyers. Of course they don't want to touch the 130-year-old scaffold law that is killing jobs and hurting our kids. 4,500 pre-K spaces gone. Overcrowded classrooms and kids in trailers.
Okay, I think this is actually pretty interesting, how you guys are going about this, and that is kind of drawing in all these different groups.
Sure.
In previous campaigns to get some sort of overhaul of the Scaffold law, some sort of reform to it, have you ever brought in, say, minority and women-owned businesses before?
No.
Have you ever brought in the school issue like you have this time? I mean, how new is this strategy?
It's very new. And in a way, it sort of suggests that maybe we could have done this better in the past, right? Because this has always been thought of as an insurance industry issue and a construction industry issue. The fact of the matter is, every segment of our population and our economy is losing because of this law. School kids, local government, state government, school districts, small businesses, everybody, construction workers, they're all losing, and only one segment of the economy is benefiting. One segment of our society is benefiting, and that's personal injury trial lawyers.
Right.
They win every time in these cases, regardless of what the facts are. Everyone else pays in higher property taxes, in fewer schools being built, in a higher cost of doing business, in less construction jobs. You look, for instance, at the state's capital spending, right? The New York Works Task Force, Governor Cuomo's task force, says that next year, all in, the state's capital spending is going to be $20 billion. Very conservatively, the value of construction in New York that goes to insurance costs as opposed to most of the rest of the country is at least about 5% higher. 5% of $20 billion is $1 billion of that $20 billion that's going to insurance instead of going to actually repairing roads and bridges and building the infrastructure we need. That means we're losing about 28,000 jobs. We're losing billions of dollars in economic impact. And, you know, to the point of the MWBE community, this is a hugely disproportionate impact for them. You look at the situation with the New York City School Construction Authority. They have probably the most successful MWBE program in the state. And its very existence is jeopardized by their difficulty and perhaps their inability to get the types of insurance they need to run that program. It would mean the loss of thousands and thousands of jobs in the MWBE community.
Okay, how extensive is this campaign? Is it airing downstate, and how much money are you throwing into it?
It's airing downstate and upstate. We're just getting started, but it is going to be a sustained effort. We are united with the MWBE community, with local governments, with the rest of the business community, and our intention is we're going to stop after the law has changed. It's long overdue.
Talking about Governor Cuomo for a second,
Sure.
you know, we've seen when this governor gets his mind behind something or wants to put his political capital behind something, especially on long sought reforms that a lot of people have said will never get through the legislature. I'm thinking of the property tax cap as being a big example of it, but there's also other things that you guys have supported in the past, like design build, for example. He got through as well, I think, during the tax code overhaul 2 years ago in December. Have you gotten any indication at all that Governor Cuomo is going to make some sort of push to at least reform Scaffold at all?
Well, I can tell you that the administration certainly understands that this is a problem, and there have been many conversations with the administration about it. Just this week in the New York Times, I think for the first time the administration was on record saying that the governor would be agreeable to looking at changing the law. Right. It needs to happen.
But what changes, I mean, obviously you know the devil's in the details for a lot of these things. What sort of changes do you think they would be agreeable to doing that could potentially get past the assembly as well?
The change you need, if you want to make the environment in New York look more like the rest of the country in terms of the cost of construction, is to go to comparative negligence. There's no reason really why you wouldn't, right? I mean, it works in the rest of New York, and again, despite false claims made by the trial bar, it's how it works in 49 other states. There is no other state in America that has an absolute liability standard. And when you think about it, why would you have an absolute liability standard? The facts should matter in these cases. I mean, really, do the trial lawyers believe that individual trial lawyers don't have the ability to go to court and prove a case for these types of incidents like they do in every other type of personal injury? It's preposterous. It just flies in the face of any sense of justice, fairness, or equity.
But is that something that will prevent the trial lawyers from getting involved? I mean, obviously, they're a group that has a lot of money,
Sure.
that is very effective at lobbying. You know, the Speaker of the State Assembly is a trial lawyer himself, who works for a personal injury law firm. I mean, is that something that you think will avoid some sort of political pushback from?
Oh, they're already pushing back. They're already involved.
In what way?
They're all over the place working against our efforts, and you know, frankly, as I pointed out, telling a lot of stories. They're telling people that other states have the same law. We first heard that 7 other states have the same law. I'm sorry, 12. Now it's down to 7, so at least we've reduced the number of states that they claim have the same law by 5. The truth is, no other states have the same law. You know, we now have, for the first time ever, some really extraordinary data on the delta in terms of insurance losses and costs in New York compared to other states, and you know, they refuse to acknowledge or accept the validity of any data that doesn't support their position. By the way, no data supports their position, because the idea that people who are not responsible in total for an injury should be held absolutely responsible for that injury is just counter to any sense of justice or common sense.
All right, Mike Elmendorf of the Associated General Contractors. We're out of time, but we'll see if this new strategy works. We'd love to have you back to talk about it.